Hey, everybody. So, in case you missed it, this was posted a couple of days ago, and it's a fairly lengthy thread over on Twitter there going on about how we are seeing the end of a golden age of role playing games. And I cannot disagree with it more. So, I'm just going to give you a quick rundown of what the thread was all about, and then a quick rebuttal to it. I'm going to do a much longer essay form uh, approach to this, but this is going to have to do for now. All right. So, the author Ben Riggs is a noted D&D historian. Like legit, dude is a D&D historian. He's put out some incredible work looking at like the ins and outs and nuts and bolts of Dungeons and Dragons through the years. It's actually been really awesome. Fantastic work. And this is really off base for him because in addition to being really ahistorical, the perspective that he comes at this from was really strange and very unexpected. So first, he lays out the situation that we're seeing the end of a golden age. That from the start of the 2010s, we'd entered into this new golden age of role playing. That's debatable, but whatever. Media and actual plays attracted new players into a vibrant community. D20 games were dominated by D&D. There's a bunch of OGL games. There's some indie games. Tides are lifting all the boats. People are coming into 5th edition and finding new games, and the OGL lets the industry flourish. Then there's the what I call the coming storm, and this is a post OGL 1.1 scandal. Companies are now leaving 5th edition, and this is a sign that the industry isn't becoming healthy, but is in fact entering into a decline. And then he goes on about some very real stuff. For example, that yes, making a new game is a financial risk. It absolutely is. But then he goes on to say not using the OGL will make things harder to succeed. There's not going to be as much 5e material anymore. Customers will suddenly be less likely to try new games or want non 5e material when, like, just before that's what they were doing, that's what they wanted. That 5th edition is the tabletop community. Like, this is something that happens a few times, like this conflation between like the larger tabletop role-playing game community and the D&D 5e community happens quite a bit. And that new games coming out are going to shatter this community, and it's going to balkanize. It's going to be awful. And will people even buy other games? Then it got weird because Ben has a very specific knowledge of D&D's history, specifically around TSR and stuff like that. But he compares TSR's internal self-competition to non-D&D games competing with D&D. And the two are apples and oranges. So basically what happened back in the day was TSR was not a very particularly well-run company, and they put out setting after setting after setting after setting, trying to capture any market share they possibly could. And it didn't always work. A lot of their game settings weren't great. A lot of them flopped. And at worst, it balkanized their own fan base because people would buy the base books for D&D, and then they would buy the setting books they wanted, but nobody was buying everything. But that's not the same as like that's self-sabotage. That's not competing with other games, which is what's happening more here. And then, more conflation of the TTRPG audience with the D&D audience. And then finally finishes up with a future where he posits that Wizards is going to destroy everything with its advertising power. Companies are going to die. People making one game won't create for another one, which is something we know isn't true right now. People create for all sorts of games all the time. Big names are taking their fandoms with them. Well, of course they are. That's, again, perfectly normal. It takes a moment to mock some other games and the futility of them existing. Then goes on to state that no future crowdfunding is ever going to be successful again after the MCDM one, and that no one can make money in the future without system dominance, which is the main message that he runs with through the entire thing, that having a single dominant system is the best thing for the community because it means that everybody's winning, when it absolutely does not. And so I have a background. I live in British Columbia, and we have had horrible experiences in real life with what were called monoculture forests. And this is where forests were harvested and then replanted with a single strand of tree, which resulted in disasters, just constant disasters. It was no good. And that's basically what he's arguing here for, is that we are better living in a monoculture forest than we are living in a diverse, healthy, and thriving forest. The other thing that he really ignores, especially from the 90s, and this is coming from like a gamer from the 90s, is that TSR's collapse didn't matter. Nobody cared. Like literally, like nobody, the role playing industry didn't collapse because TSR was dying. Palladium was having its heyday. White Wolf was having its heyday. New games were being developed all over the place. GURPS was huge. It was a time and an environment where playing a plurality of games was normal. Like you owned multiple games, you played multiple games. That was entirely normal, and it worked. It was fine. It's only been post OGL that the idea that one system has to be dominant has sort of been normalized for some reason with some people. And it doesn't. Now, will games, be as successful as they are now? Maybe, maybe not. The whole point of success is to be able to continue. It's not having all the money. It's not being the most dominant game in the world. It's simply, we have made enough money to pay everybody, invest in our future, and continue to develop our game. That's what success is. So the entire thread, I deeply disagree with it. I disagree with it on a lot of levels, from the positions and points of view that he took in it, and a lot of the like just ignoring huge key aspects of the history of the hobby in order to try to make a point that somehow we're suddenly all going to be worse off because there's more games and more variety out there, and that these games, all this material is not going to be compatible. It's fine. This is like arguing that Ford should be the only auto manufacturer in North America because they were the first auto manufacturer. And who would want to buy anything that's not a Ford? Because how are you going to find Ford parts for, your not Ford vehicle? Or, anyways. So this has been a long video already. I'm going to have, like I said, I'm going to have a longer form essay looking at this and arguing against it. Hopefully I'll have that out pretty quick. Take care, stay hydrated, play different games, and don't worry so much about this sort of nonsense. Take care, everyone. Shout out to all of my supporters. Thank you very much, especially to my master diver, Nye.